Welcome back on the AM show. Time now for the news review. You know, this segment is always brought to you courtesy of Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and they say the end to chronic disease. Now, if you're a man, they're offering you prostate screening for free. If you're a woman, they're still offering you fertility screening for free. Here's where you can locate them. They have branches dotted across the length and breadth of the country. Let me let you know of some of them. Here in Accra, locate them at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. There's Kumasi Krodumabwe here, behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrade Anaji Estate. There's Tema Community 22. There's Techiman Hanswa and Siaman Zama. Their call lines remain 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Today also marks, it's bittersweet for me. Today was the day, some 10 years ago, in 2014, we lost Komla Afeke Dumo, our very own ace broadcaster. Started from these very walls, went to the BBC, and we lost him painfully. I remember hearing of the news and not believing it. Young man, but the Lord has given, the Lord has taken. Today we commiserate with his family once more on this day, and with all of you I know who at some point may have had an interaction with him. I also celebrate someone really special, someone who has come through these walls. Awo, like we usually call you. Today is your birthday, and I just like to celebrate you, wish you the very best in life. You're a fantastic person. Yeah, you have your ups and downs, but we thank God for life. We thank God for a new cycle that he has started with you. May you be watered and like those trees planted by the river, as the Bible says. May you have a wonderful new year. Miriam Awojifa Vojogbe, happy birthday. I'll try to do this again at the tail end so that at least you would be able to chance upon it. Well, joining us for a conversation this morning, we have a finance analyst, Dr. Wisdom Dugbe. He is our guest. He joins us on the show this morning. Dr. Dugbe, a very good morning to you. Well, I don't know whether it's morning where you are, but thank you for joining us on the AM show.
Thank you, Ben. It's good to be back on the independent, fearless, and credible channel.
All right. Well, you know how we do it. The last time you joined us, I had you share your thoughts on any matter of national scope. Now we have drivers' unions up in arms saying that they are likely to increase fares by 20% plus on the 22nd day of this month. I hear there are moves from government end to have interactions with these unions, and we'll see how that pans out. Later when we have that conversation, we just might hear from the sector ministry involved, at least one of the major stakeholders. We've also heard of everything going on within the MPP and the party's preparations towards the January 27 parliamentary primaries in some constituencies. So what is the way forward in these? Well, I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that, but I'm going to give you about 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes to share your thoughts on any matters that have caught your attention, Doc, up until now.
Sure, Ben. I have followed this somewhat bizarre issue regarding the strategic mobilization Ghana Limited. And I have more questions than answers. You know, I read that they offer a range of assurance services. And here's my question. And I read an article on this in which some of the MPs, they asked the same question, that if SML is being hired to monitor and audit downstream petroleum sector, what then is the mandate of the National Petroleum Authority? What is the purpose of SML doing an automatic tank gauging system, for example, when GRA or NPA already has that in place? How is that deemed as doing revenue assurance for the state? We have institutions in place mandated to oversee what it seems the GRA and the Ministry of Finance hired SML to do. These are the sort of things that cause the average Ghanaian to lose trust in how the affairs of the nation are conducted. And when the CEO of SML is asked about some of the misleading statements on his company's website, He said he didn't know anything about website matter. Who then is in charge of SML? I would like to better understand what services that SML provides that are superior and different from the services of the NPA. Now, one of the contributors on the Fourth Estate documentary, he mentioned that this is a plug into the revenue stream of the nation, taking money for apparently zero job done. And I couldn't agree more, especially with the details available to the public so far. You know, I was listening to an input from the executive director for Africa Center for Energy Policy, and he shared that SML brought in, they were brought in to sit at a depot where the product is actually lifted. However, then the challenge is not about where the product is lifted, because when the product is lifted, NPA already has measures or systems in place to see the quantity of product that is lifted through their tank gauging system,
right,
and their metering system. And so this was not the problem to solve for. The challenge is how to track the product after it is lifted to where the tax is supposed to be collected. You know, so right from the inception of this, it was very clear to key players in the industry, by virtue of where SML sits in the chain, their relevance was questioned. They couldn't possibly be doing any meaningful revenue assurance for the state. I was glad when I read a few weeks ago that Parliament adopted the report of the Finance Committee. I think the report recommended that GRA must immediately stop all payments to SML. And also, I am inclined to opine that the president's decision to retain KPMG to audit this SML deal, then it could be a good first step, only if we can expect some real and courageous decision or action to be taken after KPMG's investigation. Now, that said, I'm also surprised that the president did not mandate the Auditor General and maybe the OSP to look into this. You know, regardless of who is investigating.
He has mandated KPMG to look into it, but some have had taken issue with that because guess what? The GRA is one of the big clients of KPMG. Of course, that is not to say, looking in the sectors in which you work, that is also not to say that they cannot be professional, but the conflict of interest, that is what people have been alluding to.
Yeah. And regardless of who is investigating, right, the allegations are quite serious, and Ghanaians they deserve better answers and action from the leaders to correct this deal. You know, I'm inclined to suggest that GRA must have been aware that the contract that they were entering into, it constitutes a multi-year commitment, right? And I learned that Section 33 of the Public Finance Management Act, it stipulates that multi-year contracts should be debated by Parliament, and the same legislative body must vote to approve or reject. So it makes me wonder what kind of process they went through, legal process they went through to award the contract. So I'm hoping, and I'm waiting to hear back from the report from KPMG.
Well, we see, and the minority in Parliament has also been saying that it will go ahead with its own investigative setup, committee, if you like, because the parameters given by, or the criteria given to the KPMG are not necessarily those ones they are going to follow, because there are more details they seek in the matter. Interestingly, the Minerals Commission has come to say that, look, we have nothing to do with this deal. We did not know about it. The MPA as well. But what I find interesting, reflecting on some of what has come up. So one entity, it's in the downstream sector, it's in the upstream sector, it's dealing with gold, it's dealing with oil. That's quite a lot. But anyway, I mean, usually you would have entities specializing in one or the other, not all of these. And that makes for interesting reading. But the sooner we can get to the bottom of this, the better. Let's quickly get into the papers. Later, there are a few other matters I want us to reflect on. But let's get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper. President Akufo-Addo attends World Economic Forum, NAM conference, and then new app deployed to curb illegal timber exploitation. You know how over the years our rosewood, for example, has been, what word would I use? Exploited, overexploited. Even when there was a ban on logging, people were still doing it Some Chinese have been involved. And you know the quality of rosewood and the cost of it when it gets outside our borders. Yet we've allowed all of that. And we also know that our forest cover has been depleted by quite a lot over the last decade or so. So all of this, well, hopefully this app. I don't know, sometimes when we talk about apps, I don't know, did you ever hear of the COVID-19 app? Dr. Dogbe?
No.
Okay, so there was an app to do this or that, and I don't know what became of that app, yet we expended, as you know, a lot of taxpayers' money into that application. This was in the thick of COVID-19 and moving forward. There's also GRA
and
cases.
That is the unfortunate thing about the way some of these things are run in our beloved country, right? We tend to take advantage of issues like this, and people just get rich out of pandemics like this. I remember I was in Ghana a couple years ago, 2 years ago actually, and I couldn't board my flight because I could only get my COVID test done by a designated clinic.
Yes.
Even though I had done my test and I had my report, so it's one of those things that plague our country.
Yeah, and I know the entity specifically that you're referring to. But let's make tracks. GRA chases Nana Kwame Bediako Cheddar for tax evasion. Crisis looms in prisons nationwide. Jails congested by 4,651 inmates as prisons service backs proposed non-custodial sentence. There is also on the back page of the paper, Black Stars ready for Egypt task. I've listened to Jordan Ayew talk about the fact that they have to be clinical, they have to do everything, and that he has utmost confidence in the staff. Ghanaian supporters dismiss allegations. And the supporters in Abidjan have dismissed allegations that they are stranded as the ongoing African Cup of Nations and are threatening to return home. Some had said that, others are saying not. I hear there's been a disbursement of $400 each to them to keep body and soul together. But today we hope that we can conquer the pharaohs of Egypt. If not, it most certainly would mean that we'd be packing bag and baggage and coming back home. But Dr. Dugbe, let me read some of the stories and get your reactions. I'll start from page 3, then go to page 8. So, I'm sure you have heard of Nana Kwame Bediako, New Force, and everything in between. Well, Nana Kwame Bediako, also known as Cheddar, who has announced his candidacy for the presidential position in Ghana's upcoming general elections, has been accused of tax evasion. Of course, not tax avoidance, which is legal, tax evasion by the Ghana Revenue Authority. According to a reliable source at the GRA, Cheddar had been fined a total of 50,000 Ghana cedis for his failure to file personal income tax returns from 2013 to 2016. Now, despite settling a sum of 209,171 cedis between 2018 and 2020, he once again failed to file his returns for the post-2020 period, the source said. The source revealed that for the years 2021 to 2022, the GRA estimated Cheddar's tax assessment to be 2,088,288 cedis and 5,096,536 Ghana cedis, respectively, along with penalties for his failure to file his personal income tax returns. Just to end, the source said, quote, as a presidential candidate and self-proclaimed savior of Ghana, his actions set a worrisome example for the ethical standards expected from individuals in influential positions. So, I mean, Cheddar sat here with me and had a conversation. One of the issues, I remember asking him 4 times what his source of wealth was. He told me about wisdom and its application. But he is also a young man trying to get into a leadership position. I told him about, look, transparency, probity, accountability, the tenets on which the Fourth Republic was grounded, and the fact that you would have to declare your assets. You would have to, if people are funding your political party or your movement, there has to be transparency in who is funding, because, of course, you could also have nefarious characters funding. That is on one end. But on the other end, some too would say, oh, gentleman comes out, starts talking about, oh, I am wealthy, I'm able to do this. He has 150 billboards, some have been pulled down. Then all of a sudden, government is on a rampage. He is being targeted. Where do you stand on this matter? You can address that before I go to the other stories.
Ben, frankly, I don't know much about Cheddar yet, but what I can say is that we need to take him seriously as a nation. I am a strong advocate of the youth and young adults being involved in leadership, including in political positions. The benefits of doing that cannot be overemphasized. That said, I don't know if Cheddar is ready to assume the office of the president of the nation at this time. I have found some of his comments. Some of his comments lack some level of transparency for someone trying to be president. As a leader and also president of a nation, the youth especially will look up to you as a role model to learn from your story. I listened to him answer questions on the source of his wealth, just like he said. And he said something like, I built these houses, this real estate with my own hands. What does that even mean, right? How would the youth take that and replicate it? Visit a construction site and you will see a lot more going into buildings and structures than mere hands.
He has this, pardon the interjection, he has this edifice in Osu, number one place. He says it took a loan from the World Bank to do that, which actually does happen in some instances. He has Kwales, he has a number of high-rise buildings. I checked out some documentation and supposedly he has many of these. But is it not fair for people to want to know what the source of his wealth is? And now that taxes are coming in, the honesty bit, what do you see?
It is absolutely a fair game, right? If you want to be president of a nation, I'm sure you may have heard about when Trump was running the first time, he refused to release his taxes.
Right.
And people took issue about this. Cheddar said he made £1 million or so at the age of 21 years of age, selling scrap metal, right?
Scrap metal.
How did it all start? He needs to break it down so the youth, with entrepreneurial spirit can attempt to replicate that. We need people like him to make the nation better, to drive entrepreneurship, investment, and mentor the youth. So I think that Ghanaians should take him seriously and listen to what he has to say. But he also has to be more transparent to the people of Ghana, from whom he's seeking support to win the presidency. To be president is a serious business, man. And I think it's rather unfortunate that, quite frankly, and a bit embarrassing how their convention was canceled, but that's a topic for another day. But I think it should be more transparent if he wants the vote.
And I wholly agree with you. Those are the very same points. I've always been for young people in leadership, though some young people are not setting a good example. Recently, the Minister for Something and Poverty in Nigeria, a young lady, 37, the youngest member of Nigeria's cabinet, she was mired in some £500,000, not going into a governmental account, going into a private account and all of that. I feel those things set a bad precedent. But look at France. Emmanuel Macron himself, very young, less than 40 when he became president. He's now appointed a prime minister, Monsieur Attal, who is 34. So there is capacity. It can be done. It's been done in other countries. How old was Obama when he became president? But on the other end, there also tends to be this bit about people who, when they are young, given position, and all they think about is making money or other things. So it's a balance we must work out. Yeah. So let's go to other stories. PPP to open nominations for flag bearer by March. Then crisis looms in prisons nationwide. So Ghana's prisons are overcrowded by 4,651 inmates, representing 45.31% congestion rate. As of Monday, the total prison population was 14,916, surpassing the authorized capacity of 10,265. The Ghana Prison Service has therefore backed a new private members bill to amend the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act 1960, that is Act 30, to introduce an alternative sentencing regime for misdemeanors. Sponsored by the Member of Parliament for Medina, Francis Xavier Kojo-Sosu, the bill was presented to the Clerk to Parliament on December the 12th last year. It aims at introducing community service and bonds of good behavior as alternatives to the traditional custodial sentences and fines for petty crimes, generally referred to as misdemeanors, where such offenses are not already specified by law. Now, to conclude, data from the Ghana Prison Service show that inmates comprise 14,732 males and 184 females. It goes on, but that's the tale of the tape. For many years, decades practically, we've been trying to work out our prison system. There's been Operation Efiase, people encouraged to contribute 1 CD, 2 CDs or more. The living conditions of our prisoners, for starters, is nothing to write home about. The levels of rehabilitation, I don't know. And then there is also the bit about congestion. And so what do you think about this call for custodial, non-custodial sentences? And I know in the US, it's pretty common. People get that.
Absolutely. And I think Honorable Francis is doing a good job with this. I think there is pressing need for prison reform for several reasons, right? The primary goal of prisons should be to rehabilitate individuals and prepare them for successful reintegration into society. That oftentimes the focus is now on punishment and on providing education, training, and even mental health support that can help individuals address the root cause of their criminal behavior. And there is overcrowding, right? Prisons in many countries, not just in Ghana, are overcrowded, leading to inhumane living conditions and increased violence. And so I think there is a more reason at this point to start some kind of a process to reform our prisons, and they address also disparity and mental health and substance abuse. That is one of the reasons why people go to prison, right? And focus also on restorative justice. Right. I think this is a call in the right direction at this point.
Right. Experts discuss air quality in West Africa. That's on page 4 of the newspaper. There was a time last year when there were concerns about the air quality in many parts of the world, including here in Ghana, and what we were inhaling by way of air in different parts of Accra and other cities within the country. But let me go to that app, and then I guess we can say it's done and dusted for the Ghanaian Times newspaper. New app deployed to curb illegal timber exploitation. A new device to track illegal logging from the country's forests has been deployed in an effort to curb the incidence of illegal exploitation of the timber resources. When fed with the documentation of the logs, Xylorix Pocket Wood, the app or device, will quickly scan them and give off the information about the wood being carried or conveyed. It was developed by Dr. Emmanuel Ibanyele, a wood anatomist at the Forestry Research Institute of the Ghana Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. As a result of the new technology, 198 customs officers, grading and inspection officers at the Department of the Timber Industry Development Division and civil society organizations have been trained on the use of the device. And I believe it's a step in the right direction. President Akufo-Addo attends World Economic Forum and the NAM conference. Of course, the non-aligned movement. It goes way back. What do you make, though, Doc, when you look at our economy today? Of course, we're hoping we can get that second tranche of the IMF's releases, another 600 million, without which it could be disastrous for Ghana. We are very close. Our inflationary rate has been tamed year on year, but not month on month. Our import cover from August last year was just about a month. What do you make of where we find ourselves, economically speaking, ahead of getting the second tranche of the IMF's money?
Look, Ben, it's a wonderful thing and a great news that we have reached an agreement with the bilateral creditors after successfully completing the domestic debt exchange program. And I'm happy to learn that the next tranche of funds from the IMF will be released with this agreement in place. And I also learned that that could also unlock additional funds from the World Bank, all of which is good news, right? This will ease the pressure on the city and also attempt to restore some kind of investor confidence and also attract FDIs and other investments into the country. You know, the availability of IMF funding should provide some reassurance to international investors and lenders about the future economic prospects of the nation. All great news. But the part I want Ghanaians to focus on is we have to ask ourselves, what got us into this mess in the first place? Right. This heavy indebtedness, the level of which one can argue we haven't seen since independence. I read in one of Joy News reporting on how the finance minister is touting this agreement with the bilateral creditors as evidence that Ghana has indeed turned a corner. Really. You owe someone and you go beg to have your obligations reduced. I don't think that necessarily is evidence that we've turned a corner. IMF is giving you a bailout. Of what use is that if corruption still runs amok in the government?
Right.
When folks are waiting for the funds to be siphoned into private pockets or mismanaged. Ben, if I recall, I saw one of your programs where you actually referred to some of the folks that mismanage government resources as economic hyenas. Look, I cannot make a case against such categorization of those Ghanaians. But I have questions, and one question for our leaders. If Ghana was your own private business, would you run it the same way as you're currently running your ministry or agency? Can you look yourself in the mirror and tap yourself on the shoulders and say, indeed, I have done well for Mother Ghana? So all I'm saying is that in all of this debt restructure, the government must act in good faith, not just to the credit and the G20 common framework, but mainly to the people of Ghana.
Right.
These funds coming from IMF should indeed be allocated to key public investments, especially in agriculture, healthcare, infrastructure development, and mainly into ventures that will provide the government with direct returns. Right. We need to be serious about long-term sustainability, Ben. And I appreciate the fact that the finance minister said this is a step towards the long-term sustainability. The government should aim for a prudent and sustainable approach, to this debt restructuring to avoid excessive accumulation of debt for future governments and, for that matter, the people of Ghana. So can we set a target for debt to GDP ratio and ensure that the borrowing is in line with the country's long-term fiscal sustainability?
Right.
Can we put policies in place to reduce the demand for the almighty dollar, which has been a drag on the city? One other thing I want to read about or hear or see from the government is some emphasis on risk management that is associated with debt, right? Including interest rate risk and the currency or FX risk. We need to develop a comprehensive risk management framework and a culture of monitoring and mitigating some of these risks, Ben. The debt issue, it kind of bothers me a whole lot, and I know it concerns a lot of Ghanaians. So I actually reached out and proactively shared specific recommendations with folks in the current administration, how I believe we can better manage at least the interest rate risk exposure.
What was the response? Which entities did you reach out to? What was the response, briefly, so we can move to other stories?
I won't mention names here, but I will tell you this. About a month ago, I also had the opportunity to sit down with His Excellency President John Mahama about this, and some of the members of Parliament. I actually talked to Dr. Atu Forson as well, and Honorable Isaac Adongo, and I shared my thoughts with them about the need for Ghana to establish a comprehensive hedging policy to mitigate some of these exposures.
Why are you not sharing that with this administration? We're in the heat of an economic downturn. Why are you not sharing it with them?
I have, but I'm not able to mention names at this point. I have actually reached out proactively, had conversations, and shared my thoughts with them.
Okay. Would you say the finance ministry is aware of what you shared?
I haven't talked to His Excellency or Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta.
No, I'm not saying you've spoken to him, but I'm asking, would you say that based on what you've shared, do you think anyone at the finance ministry would probably have got a hint of what you shared, what you think could save
Absolutely.
us?
And I shared with folks at the Bank of Ghana as well, right? I do have connections in there, friends in there, networks in there, and I've shared some of these ideas with them. But it doesn't make any sense if you think about it, right? If you can't go borrowing, and these are not fixed rate debt. These are also floating rate debt. We need to put risk management measures in place to be able to protect the nation from losing money just because we can hedge our risk. That's not the best way to manage debt risk.
Let's get into the Daily Guide newspaper now. NAM1 trial judge threatens lawyers with prison. Veep hosts chef Failatu. I don't know yet whether she's heard from the Guinness World Records. As of yesterday, when I checked, she hadn't. NDC gurus swear blood oath with sword. Judicial Service denies bungalow sale. NDC suspends Hamid Bewa. We've looked at that story quite a bit. Benzema files defamation suit against Minister. Kudus returns to face Egypt. He picked up an injury from what we hear. And Vinicius Jr. is dangerous. That's a story there at the back page or on the back page of the paper. So let's get into some of the stories. There is so the judge conducting the trial of embattled Chief Executive Officer of Men's Gold Ghana Limited, Namwan, has threatened to commit lawyers in the case to prison if they fail to show the necessary courtesy to the court. According to Justice Ernest Owusu Dapa, a Court of Appeal judge sitting as an additional High Court judge, he will not tolerate any disrespect from any of the lawyers in the matter and will not hesitate to use the powers granted him by the Constitution. He said if the disrespect continued, he would commit the lawyers for contempt of court and send them to prison, indicating that not even the president could get him to rescind that decision. There's also some leading members of the opposition, NDC, have devolved into the hubris of occultism, the story in the Daily Guide says, swearing a blood oath to the party ahead of this year's elections. I will refrain from reading the rest of the story because, of course, usually these have a political tint and occultism or whatever else it may be called. But pictured there, Elvis Efriye Ankra, supposedly with a sword. Whatever is being done with it, I do not know. I feel we all should be measured in our actions, especially the political actors, and also how these are communicated. Let me see whether there are other stories I can take a look at before we move. Intense Israeli strikes in South Gaza City, and that is there. There's also this interesting story of a mother wrongly jailed for 20 years, an Australian mother who spent 2 decades in prison after she was wrongly found guilty of killing her 4 children and had her convictions formally quashed Thursday as her lawyers called for legal reform and, quote, substantial compensation. Imagine that, losing 20 years of your life. I'll end with these stories. Boy 18 butchered. He survived a dangerous machete attack after he was brutally butchered on the head, left leg, and left arm with a sharp machete. A victim, Gabriel Kwekuchumesi, was in his house at Ebuakwa Kubiase in the Ashanti region on January 16, 2024, when he was violently attacked. According to the police, one Kwabena Ejeyi, a student of Barakesi SHS, also of Ebuakwa Dadiase, armed with a machete, butchered Chumesi without provocation. So this attack then set media standards to address irregularities, according to Sam George, the Member of Parliament for Ningo Pram. Then there is the NAM1 trial judge situation, not much in there. And then this bit about a blood oath with a sword. Any quick thoughts to share on anyone?
Yes, Ben, I think that I'll react to the Israel-Hamas item, right?
Right.
That was really an unfortunate turn of events with ripple effects across the Middle East with Houthi rebels joining the fray of the dispute, targeting...
And the rebels have now been recategorized as a terrorist group by the U.S.
Absolutely. And I tell you this, regardless of which side of the aisle you sit, right, the devastation on both sides is enormous. And both parties need to find a quick way of ending this. You know, Palestinian lives matter and Israeli lives also matter. And so I think this is good news that there was a report that a deal has been reached to provide some kind of aid to Gaza and the hostages. But let me comment briefly on this ongoing genocide case that South Africa brought against Israel. We ought to ask the basic question here. How did the recent conflict start? Did the world watch a group of partygoers got murdered in cold blood? How old women and men were pulled from their kibbutz and killed like chicken, and babies were murdered just like they were not human beings, right? What is the outrage from folks that are angry, you know, that is genocide going on? You know, genocide, I'm not condoning that. It's definitely a very serious thing. It's a systematic extermination of a particular group of people. And the UN also defines it as an act committed with the intent to destroy a whole ethnic or racial group or religious group. Look, I don't claim to be a lawyer here, but we've seen these acts of causing serious bodily harm on both sides of the conflict. And I'm curious to know what folks that are very angry with one side, what do they think about October 7th last year in Israel? And also the UN categorizes genocide as deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring the physical destruction of the group, including the provision of food, water, shelter, healthcare, and so on. You know, South Africa brought this lawsuit against Israel, citing some of these deprivation as acts of genocide by Israel. What do they have to say about the hostages, right? The UN also calls out forcibly transferring children of a targeted group or nationality to another group or nationality, right? Forcibly separating these children from their parents and their families or communities, and with one goal of indoctrinating these children with doctrines of the oppressor. The other day, we heard that Russia forcibly transferred children from Ukraine to Russia and teaching them about Russia's doctrine. What was the outrage about that? I think we need to, if we're going to get angry, we need to get angry with the similar situation all across board. But what I'm saying is that what is going on is barbaric. Both parties need to come together. Israel and Palestinians need to come together and solve this once and for all. I know it's been going on for many years, but we can't continue like this, right? Human life should mean something to the warring factions at some point.
Thoughts, but before I take your final thoughts, we're done with the newspapers. There's a story on myjoyonline.com. I heard it yesterday and thought it was a joke until I actually saw. Akufo-Addo attributes neglect of development in Ekumfi to residents' vote against Atukujo. Now, Atukujo was the member of parliament, was not voted for. The president has revealed that his government neglected development in Ekumfi, a constituency, due to the residents' decision to vote Francis Atukujo out of parliament in the 2020 elections. He won in 2016, and the president expressed dissatisfaction, and he said despite appointing Atukujo as Deputy Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture, the constituents had voted him out. And quoting the president, he says, Atukujo was your MP, and I made him a deputy minister, and you voted him out in the last elections. And because of that, I did not pay attention to development in your area. I have to be honest with you. But since you have brought it up, I'll pay attention to it. People have taken him up on this, especially on the back of what he said in Mepe when the Akosombo Dam spillage thing happened, and he spoke about, you did not vote for me, but I'm still doing this. I don't know what you make of the president's rhetoric in this light. You have less than a minute, straight to the point on this.
I'll tell you though, I can't fathom that, right? I just cannot explain. I'm a father of three. I can't say that I don't want to do something for one of those because somebody else's action impacted my decision to do that, right? It just doesn't make sense, and I have more questions than answers for you on this one, but Ghanaians can read through this. Ghanaians are very smart, right? You don't tell them stuff like this and just let it slide under the racks. He is the president of Ghana,
right.
And his responsibility is to allocate resources fairly, equitably, and justly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dugbe, for joining the conversation. Dr. Dugbe, a finance analyst, joining the conversation all the way from the United States. We're grateful for the time you've spent with us here this morning. Thelma Bimpe, I see you. A very good morning to you. I hope you're well. Miriam Awojifa Vojogbe, today happens to be your birthday, the 18th day of the first month. You're a wonderful person. God richly bless you and keep you and strengthen you. And of course, my regards to all parties involved. I don't know where the party is going to be today, so you'd have to let me know. I saw this comment come through. Isa Mustafa says, good morning. I'm watching you live from the WA in the Upper West region. Keep up the good work. Thank you for doing the watching. Before we veer into sports, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helping us bring you this segment. And of course, if you're a man, they're offering you prostate screening for free. If you're a woman, they're offering you fertility screening for free. Here's where you can locate them: in Accra at Spentex opposite the Shell signboard, in Kumasi, Kronomaboy here behind the Angel Educational Complex, the Stakrade Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and Esiamanzama. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 3, 2, 1. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. I just remembered that I had a birthday wish from someone else. Let me just check it out before we proceed. All right, so there it is. Happy birthday to Aunt Janet. Aunt Janet, CEO of Buck Inn in Bolaga. May the good Lord continue to bless and protect you in all your endeavors in life. You are destined for greatness. Enjoy your day. It's from Samuel Mbura. Samuel Mbura. To you, Aunt Janet, CEO of Buck Inn in Bolaga. But speaking of bucking in, right? We're hoping that our senior national team, the Black Stars, will be able to go past the Pharaohs of Egypt. It is a make or break match today after losing to Cabo Verde in the first match. But how will they fare? Which players do you think we should be fielding and all of that? Well, there's a lengthy discussion with our pundits coming up next as our sports team picks up your views on those matters. That discussion up next on the AM Show.